Hello, beautiful sisters, and welcome back to the Red Tent Podcast, or welcome in if it's your first time here. My name is Becca, and I am so happy to have you here sitting in circle with us today virtually. And yeah, I cannot wait to share this information with you today about how I chart my cycle, because it's been such a beautiful thing to incorporate into my life. And it may seem complicated, but it is not. And I'm going to tell you why and exactly how I do it. Now, disclaimer, I am not a medical professional by any means. I am not even a cycle awareness practitioner. I am just someone who has used cycle awareness for the last about 6 years now. And this is my lived experience. This is how it's benefited my life. I'm going to tell you some stories about how this has benefited my life. And yeah, why don't we start with that? So, story time. Once upon a time, this is about 6 years ago, maybe 6.5, I had just met my now husband, and I had been on hormonal birth control before, the pill. I took one version of the pill. I can't remember what the name of it was, started with a C, gave me some really adverse mental health, they would say hormonal, but I think it's just because I was taking the hormones and my body didn't agree with it. And if you're sitting here with us today, it could be because you are in a similar position. So if you have had the adverse effects that birth control can sometimes give, or a lot of the times give, I am right there with you. So what happened was I took it when I was a teenager. Wasn't a fan of the first pill that they put me on. So I went back to the OBGYN and I told them what happened. And then she recommended that I go on low estrogen, which I'm not sure if that's still around. I would be surprised if it isn't, but it is supposedly just like the pill, but it is a lower dose for those that are sensitive to the higher doses of hormones, which a little bit about me, my body is super sensitive. I'm just a sensitive person all around. I can feel it when I take ibuprofen. I feel obviously I feel a difference, but I feel like I can feel it. You know what I mean? So if you're like me, leave me a comment and let me know. Solidarity to my sensitive sisters. It's a blessing. It can be a curse, but it is a blessing, okay? And I'm going to tell you about how it has helped me in my life. But anyways, so I went on the low estrogen. It was okay. I took it for a few months. And the reason why I wanted to go on birth control in the first place is because I had been having some painful cycles. And when I say painful, I mean I was missing school, I could not function, that sort of thing. So fast forward years later, I meet my now husband, and I had been off of the birth control for a few years, but then I was starting to have some painful cycles. So after a few months of that happening, I was like, okay, maybe I should just go on a hormonal birth control again. So I went back to the OBGYN. They again put me on low estrogen. I began taking that. It's supposed to be the lowest dose, right? So 1 month later, and they just gave me 1 month just to try it out. So 1 month later, I was about to run out of it. And I was like, oh wait, I didn't get the full prescription. So I went back to the OBGYN and I was like, hey, I think this is going okay. I haven't had a lot of adverse symptoms or anything like that. Can we go ahead and do a prescription? So I get a prescription, and then the month after that, I didn't really have a cycle. I didn't have a cycle, obviously, because you're taking the hormones, but I didn't bleed at all. And then I started taking the next month. Took the next month, and then towards the end of that cycle, I started to become feverish and just feeling almost like I had the flu. And then I noticed this color of discharge that I had never noticed before. It was like a green color, very alarming, very scary. I was like, what is going on here? So I went back to the OBGYN. There, of course, like, we need to do an STI screening and like all this stuff. And I was like, okay. So it turned out that I had an infection on my cervix, which isn't super common. And I don't want to alarm you if you're taking birth control. Most people do not experience this at all. Very uncommon side effect, but it can be a side effect of taking hormonal birth control, and here's why. Usually our cervix is opening and closing at different phases of our cycle to let our cervical fluid through, to let our bleed through. It dilates just a little bit. That's why cramps hurt, and they can hurt worse when other things are going on as well, other tissue misalignments and things like that, endometriosis, fibroids, all of that can, of course, make those little dilation, which you are dilating when you're bleeding just a little bit, not as much as when you're having a baby, of course, but we do dilate a little bit. So, anywho, it opens and closes, right? Cervix, she has her own spirit. I don't know. For me, our cervixes, they can tell us things, okay? And my cervix was speaking loudly, and had an infection. And I was like, wow. And so, of course, they gave me antibiotics for the infection. Nothing else was wrong besides the cervical infection. And so I'm laying on the couch, you know, having taken the antibiotics, and I'm laying there with my husband, and I'm just like, there is no way that this is normal. There is no way that, you know, like, I had never had issues with my cervix before. I didn't have any sort of like microbiome issues going on, yeast or anything like that can happen. Like, I didn't have any of that going on. And it just really felt like my gut was telling me, this is the birth control. Which now, of course, after studying this for several years, I know that my cervix probably wasn't opening and closing enough to let any fluid out that could have been collecting on the top of my cervix. And so when I did notice the first amount of discharge, it was like a green color. And that, I'm assuming, could have been because it had just been, you know, sitting there, not able to be released. The influence of the hormones on my body versus like going from not taking birth control just to taking birth control, the normal dose, the low dose even. My body was like thrown off kilter and not able to release my cervical fluid and, you know, have a cycle or anything like that. So that's what happened. And I was just beside myself. I was like, I know my body. I know something is off. I don't want to be having these painful cycles, of course, but I also don't want to be on this birth control that is also having an effect on my body. And so that is the benefit of being a sensitive girly, is that I was in this dilemma, but then found a solution. And the solution was charting my cycle, which is what we're talking about today. And I have come across so many beautiful and impactful women who are sharing this information online. And that is why I want to share this information, because all of the free resources on the internet and all of the stories that I've heard of other women that are similar or different from mine have just helped me so much in learning how to actually do this in the real world. Because let's be honest, we can do lots of research and read up, you know, the whole guide, you know, and we can pay a lot of money for cycle awareness coaches, you know, if that's in the budget for us, which a lot of times it just isn't. And still, hearing someone else's story, hearing another woman's story, hey, this is what I went through, this is what works for me, that's sometimes enough to at least get us started. So that is why I'm sharing this with you today. A lot of this information I have learned from the beautiful and incredible Inga Fleur. Her channel is called Fertility Homeopath on YouTube, and she is just an incredible resource of information. She's also a homeopath. So shout out to her, but also so many other women here on the internet who are being beacons of this information. And I just want to pay it forward, and I just want to not sell you a course, not, you know, ask for anything in return. This is just me being so in tune with my body now, and so like my symptoms have been so lessened by everything that I've learned, and I just want to tell you. I just want to tell you all about it, and the only thing that I ask is that you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or leave us a rating on Spotify. I don't own the red tent. The red tent is something that has been around long before me. And so the only thing I want to do is make sure that it is around long after I go as well. And that we're able to sit here and circle with each other and just, yeah, share our stories, because ultimately that is how I learn things, is by listening to other women's stories. And that, yeah, now I'm going to tell you the story of how I started charting my cycle. So the first thing that I started doing after learning this from Fertility Homeopath is charting my basal body temperature. You may have heard of this before, and it seems like it would be super complicated. And, you know, me explaining it, saying, you know, we take our temperature every single morning around the same time. It might seem like, oh my gosh, that's so regimented. Like, it can seem like a drag. It is not. It is super easy. In fact, I've been doing it for 6 years, every single morning, and it has just become a part of my routine. You know, most of us have an alarm clock that goes off at a certain time of the morning anyway. So literally all I do, my little alarm goes off. I put my basal body temperature thermometer under my tongue, and I'll leave one that I recommend down below, because they can be expensive if you get the ones that are like for fertility, but it's the same thing as like the $8 ones that you can get, you know, or $10 or whatever from Amazon. So I'll leave a recommendation for one of those down below. Not expensive, okay? Doesn't have to be expensive. This is me in post realizing that I left out a really vital piece of information about basal body temperature. Make sure that you're still laying in bed. So literally just keep laying in bed and take your temperature and just be still, because your temperature can rise or drop, but usually rise when you get up and like start going about. So don't like walk around with your thermometer sticking out of your mouth, walking around and doing things, because it's not going to be accurate. You want your basal body temperature to be taken at its base, which is after you've been sleeping for usually at least 4 hours, and while you are still lying down. So just wanted to make sure you know that. Love ya. And then I just take my temperature, and then I look at it, you know, mentally. You can either jot it down or put it right into your app, which I have an app that I'm going to recommend in just a second. This is the one that I use. It's cheap. It doesn't try to tell you how your own cycle is working, okay? It allows you to be the one who's putting in all the information. This is what I'm going to track. That I will tell you when I have ovulated, okay? Don't let an app tell you that you are going to ovulate or that you have ovulated. An app cannot tell you that, and that can get you pregnant when you didn't want to be, okay? So this is how I've done it for the last 6 years. I have not gotten pregnant by accident. If that has happened to you, girl, I will never judge you. I will never judge you, just period, okay? But I just want to forewarn those of you who do not want to get pregnant right now, don't rely on natural cycles or any period app to tell you when you're going to ovulate or when you have ovulated, because chances are you aren't or you haven't, and you might get pregnant by accident. All right? I'm just saying, all right? Don't shoot the messenger. I know it's not good marketing for me to say that, but it is what it is. Okay, beautiful ladies, I am just putting it out how it is, baby. So anyway, all I do is I make a mental note of it in my mind, because I don't like to... Okay, I'll just go ahead and tell you about the app. This is my favorite app. I love this app so much. It's literally probably my favorite app in my entire phone. I look forward to it. Clearly I geek out about this stuff anyway, but I look forward to it. I look forward to going in my app and putting in my information, because the Read Your Body app, which I will link down below, it is a paid app, I will say. However, it is about $15, I think they just raised it to maybe like $20 per year. Okay, it's not per month. They don't charge you every month. They charge you one time per year, and it is $15 to $20, I believe. And that's in USD. So if you're watching elsewhere, it might be a little bit different. But in my opinion, this is my favorite app that I have in my phone. It is so customizable. It listens to you. It doesn't tell you things about your own cycle. It lets you decipher it, which is the most important thing, because now is the time. Okay, now is, and I don't say that to scare you. I say that to inspire, because this has helped me so much. Not only have I not gotten pregnant by accident, which is a big deal. Okay, that's a big freaking deal. But also, secondly, I now know so much more information about my own body, which has helped me when I do decide to go to the OBGYN, or I do want to get certain blood tests, or I do want to make sure I know my hormone levels and how things are going. I now have that language to ask for the right test to be done. I don't have to pay for appointment after appointment after appointment of going over the same information or still drawing blanks, because I know what to ask for and I know the terminology to use. And I also have a reference point. I have this chart right there in my phone that I can show the doctor or homeopath or whoever you're seeing that, hey, this is what's going on. You know, this is what my temperatures have been. This is when I've been ovulating. I didn't ovulate last cycle or the cycle before. Oh, which reminds me, I love to tell all my sisters on here where I'm at in my cycle as I'm filming these videos. So today I am on cycle day 11. My mood has been pretty good. And yeah, the cycle before last, I did not ovulate. The cycle that I just had, I ovulated a lot sooner than I ever thought that I would. And I think that is just because I did not ovulate the cycle before that. And so I already had one in the pipe, kind of, you know, so my FSH had already been, follicle stimulating hormone had already been going up, my LH, and then I didn't ovulate. So then the cycle after that, I ovulated way early, which, case in point, that is why you don't want to let an app tell you when you're going to ovulate, because it varies. Okay, that app would not have known that I had an anovulatory cycle. That's how I measure my basal body temperature. I just take a mental note of that in the morning, and then, you know, after I've risen for the day and I pick up my phone for the first time, that's the first thing that I do, is just jot down that temperature, the time of day that I took it, and then you can move forward in the app. Pretty much the only things that I chart to make it super easy for myself is my basal body temperature and my cervical fluid. And just from those two things, and I'll explain cervical fluid here in a second how I do that, but just with those two things, I've learned so much about my body. I know exactly where I'm at in my cycle. I know if I'm going to ovulate soon. I know if I've already ovulated. And that's all you really need to know. Okay, well, it's not all you really need to know, but I also know how long my follicular phase is. I also know how long my luteal phase is. And that tells you, how much estrogen you have in your body, a relative point. How much progesterone you have in your body, a relative point. So yeah, just so grateful to have found the Read Your Body app and started taking my basal body temperature. Very simple. So, cervical fluid. How do I track my cervical fluid? So you can just, look at the toilet paper after you wipe for the first time. After using the restroom, you can look at that and get a general idea. Some people are good with that. Some people have like plentiful cervical fluid throughout their cycle, so that is what they notice. And then you can also track the sensation. If you wipe and it feels super slick, then that would be a slippery sensation, and that would indicate that you're probably getting closer to ovulation, because that ovulatory phase cervical fluid is very rich and it's very kind of gelatinous and gooey and like that egg white texture that you've probably heard of it described as before. That is in the ovulatory phase. I personally don't have a super abundance of cervical fluid. Every now and then, like when I am around ovulation, I will see a little bit, either in my undies or I will see it like on the toilet paper a tiny bit. But I am a person, like I just gotta stick a finger up there and see sometimes. And when you do that, you also can feel where your cervix is, because the cervix kind of, she will move up whenever ovulation is happening, give you a little bit more space, and then the sensation of the cervix will feel a little bit softer, a little gooey, because you have that fertile cervical mucus on there. And that is how I personally track my cervical mucus. I don't necessarily do it every single day, but when I know I'm gearing up to ovulate, or I want to see how close I am to ovulation, I will just pop a finger up there. And sometimes it's very high around that point of your cycle. So sometimes it feels like, is my cervix, where you at? But if I lay down, then sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to feel where my cervix is. But even just putting your finger in without necessarily having to feel your actual cervix, and then looking at it to see what the texture is, and if it's that sticky, stretchy texture, then that'll let you know I'm getting close to when I'm going to be ovulating. If it is not sticky or stretchy, and it is more so white and not as clear, and just kind of has that, I just want to say like estrogenic, but that doesn't really describe it. It's more so, they say school glue, but that's not really the right texture either. It's hard to describe, but if, it doesn't have that stretch to it, if it is not sticky, if it's more so dry, I would say more so dry, like it's still a fluid, but it's a little bit more dry, then that would mean that you're either not quite getting to ovulation yet, or you're already in your luteal phase, and you're just kind of pushing out that excess estrogen, getting it out of the system, and that is just your regular cervical fluid that's there to protect your microbiome, have a little bit of acidity to it, so that anything that's not meant to be there just gets naturally cleansed out and about and on its merry little way. Now, at this current phase of my cycle where I'm at right now, I'm not quite in that ovulatory phase yet. I would say my average ovulation day is probably day 17 or 18. So I'm not in that window of when I would be fertile quite yet. I have been having a lot of watery cervical fluid. So it's just almost looking like water, like just coming out, and it's just like watery. And that is also just your regular cervical fluid that's there to, after your cycle has ended, just, you know, kind of rinse out on its own. Okay, you don't have to douche. Your body literally does that on its own. Okay, they're just trying to sell you on things that they're saying are going to help you, you know, smell better or feel better or whatever. That isn't true. Okay, they just want your money. Okay, and I do not. That's why this video is free to watch, or this podcast is free to listen to, because I'm not looking for that. Okay, just saying. I'm just putting it out there. It's your body, your choice, but I am just telling you the information so that you can know and make the decision that's best for you. Anywho, so that's where I'm at right now. Just a lot of watery, just a lot of rinsing out and clearing out and getting ready to ovulate. Yay. Okay. So that's how I track my cervical fluid. There are lots of other ways to do it. Listen to other women's stories too. I'm just one person. So once you started to track your basal body temperature, and once you've started to track your cervical fluid, perhaps you can just track your basal body temperature. The only thing with that is you're not going to know until you have already ovulated when you'll ovulate for that cycle, because your basal body temperature will go up after you have ovulated, only after. Okay, so it's not gonna tell you, you know, this is when you're gonna ovulate. The basal body temperature doesn't do that. The cervical fluid does, however. So just let that be known. That is so, but if you only wanted to track basal body temperature, you would know, and if you had a regular cycle, you can do that. Then you will know, okay, this is the day that I usually ovulate, because what's going to happen is your basal body temperature is going to rise about, you know, I would say 0.6 plus, you know, so it's going to raise almost a full degree after you've ovulated. And so if you have a very regular cycle, which can change, still can change, but let's say you have a 30-day cycle every single time. Some women experience that, or a 28-day cycle every single time. Then you'll know, okay, if I have a 28-day cycle, I'm ovulating on this day, because that's when, you know, 24 to 48 hours later, that's when my temperature shoots up. And then after your temperature shoots up, that is your luteal phase. That is when you got that progesterone going, which is just pro-gestation. Your body is trying to make an embryo, okay? Did you give it what it needed to do that? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what phase of life that you're in. But that is when your temperature will be high. Mine is usually around 98 degrees, going up to 98.2-ish. Can't even go up higher than that, especially in the summertime. But right now, having not ovulated yet, my temperature this morning was 97.35. So as you can see, you know, it's almost a full degree that it goes up. So very interesting to know. Very cool that our bodies do that. Our metabolism kind of goes up, not kind of, but really does go up in our luteal phase to, you know, help life continue to grow. If it's going to, it will. But either way, you need a few extra calories during that phase of your cycle, because your metabolism is burning hotter. And so you are just going through things a little bit faster. So when is day one? After you've started charting, when does cycle day one start? You can start charting at any phase of your cycle. Start charting today if you can, or tomorrow morning. Start charting, because it's amazing. But you can start at any time. Your cycle day one is going to be on the first day that you bleed. So that first day, usually, I mean, your temperature might still be a little bit high. It might have already gone down. Mine typically goes down the day that I'm going to start bleeding. My temperature goes down. So then I'm like, oh, start bleeding today, which I usually already know because my luteal phase is between 13 and 14 days every single cycle. So, and that has been very consistent for me. So now that I know that about my body, and I know, okay, this is how much progesterone I'm making to give myself a 13 to 14 day luteal phase, you know, I'm ready. I have started to hibernate a little bit, stay indoors a bit more. I prepared myself a couple of foods, hopefully. Sometimes I procrastinate, but go to the grocery store a couple days before, make sure I'm stocked up on all my goodies. And then the morning that my bleed is gonna start, my temperature will usually go back down into the 97s. So then I'm like, okay, today's the day. It's happening. So if you do lean towards having a more painful cycle or really intense cramping or bad mood swings or things like that, you'll know, okay, now I can adjust my life at this point so that I can be away from people that I don't want to be around during this phase. I can go ahead and take any supplements or medications that I need to take around this time beforehand. That way you're going into it with your best foot forward. Yeah, really helpful to do that. Just saying. So when you know, you know. And yep. Also, the period apps, they're not going to tell you exactly when you're going to bleed. They'll give you a window and then they'll take credit for having told you, but your luteal phase is not going to be necessarily the exact same every time. It usually is for me. It doesn't necessarily mean that is going to be the case for you. Our levels of progesterone, now if your progesterone is really high, you're going to have like a 14 or 15 day luteal phase. If your progesterone is a little bit lower, you're likely more going to have, you know, a shorter luteal phase. And if you have low progesterone, then there are things that you can do about that. I haven't personally gone through it, but again, Fertility Homeopath here on YouTube has a lot of videos on those sorts of things, or you could reach out to her and let her know about your situation once you got a couple of those charts in tow, okay? It's really helpful. I'm just saying, it's really helpful. All right, so how do you know that you're ovulating? Well, first of all, your temperature is gonna rise after the fact. Before, you're gonna have that fertile cervical mucus, okay? And then your temperature is gonna stay high afterwards. So sometimes you'll have a bit of a fluke. You'll wake up a little bit later one morning, sleep through your alarm, then you'll take your temperature and it'll go up, and then you'll be like, oh wait, did I ovulate? But then the next day it'll go back down, and then the day after that it's still down, and you're like, oh wait a minute, hold on. So I typically wait 3 days for my temperature to be on the rise to confirm that I have ovulated. Usually 2 days is enough. If I've got that 98 degree temperature, I wake up the next morning and I have a 98 degree temperature again. I'm like, yep, this has happened. All right, cool. And then I pretty much know. But the third day is when I put in my little Read Your Body app, yes, ovulation is confirmed. And then it'll start your countdown. Today is day 1 of your luteal phase. And it's like a little game for me. I don't know. I find it very fun. Also, just to know where I'm at in my cycle on any given day is just so helpful because it gives me information on how I'm likely going to be feeling and yeah, just what's going on in my body, which I love to know. Like I said, I'm a sensitive girly and I love to know. And I know that there are so many more of us out there who want to know what's going on in our bodies. Like we want to have this connection to our bodies, and we naturally do have this connection to our bodies. You know, when you have that gut feeling or that intuition about something where you just know, or if you're sick and the doctors are telling you that nothing is wrong, then you're just like, no. That is it. We know our bodies, and just with these extra couple of things, the basal body temperature and the cervical fluid tracking, that puts us in such a great position to have our intuition and our information working in sync, so that we have these tools that we can then move forward, and the language that we can then move forward and say, okay, this is what's going on in my body. I know this for a fact. And yeah, take charge of our fertility. Get pregnant when we want to get pregnant, not get pregnant when we don't want to get pregnant. No big deal. But yeah, also just having a closer connection to our cycles, which is, yeah, not to get too hippy dippy on you, but it's also our connection to nature. It's our connection to the circle of life. All right. I'll leave it there. I love you, sisters. Thank you so much for joining me today and joining the rest of us listening. Let us know. Do you know where you're at in your cycle? Leave it in the comments below. If you have any reflections or any stories that you'd like to tell, I'm all ears. So thank you so much for being here. I love ya. Mwah! Happy charting. The resources are in the description.